Hi guys, Buildzoid here, and today we're going to be taking this mess right here for a bit of a spin. Well, I already know what it does, so it's mostly going to be me complaining about how boring and unimpressive it is. Like, a lot of people might be like, wait, this runs? And it's like, well, yeah, of course it runs. There's nothing saying that electrons need to go through well-organized, clean systems, just that sometimes it's a bit easier to work on that kind of thing. Oh, wait, I don't want to go to the BIOS. Did I? Please don't tell me I autopiloted into the BIOS, whatever. Um, anyway, yeah, so this runs, and this mess is, of course, that GTX Titan X Maxwell that I got as fan mail, which was dead. Uh, did it go back to being dead, or did I just, like, screw up something with the hard drives? Why ain't it booting? Oh, I know why it ain't booting. I forgot the need to set the voltage. There. Anyway, um, yeah, so, screw it. I'm not doing a retake. I've done several takes of this video because it's like, I don't know. Like, on one hand, it's like, oh, this should be super exciting because look at how ridiculous this card is. But, like, I run this thing so much at this point that the fact that it turns on is just kind of like, yeah, it turns on. Now, if it could also overclock, that would actually be great, you know? That's, like, the part I actually care about. But, anyway, so I have the ePower 5 from EVGA hooked up to it. And yeah, so that's like a 12-phase VRM replacing the original V-Core. I'm going to go into more detail on the modifications in a separate video just because, like, I actually want to show you the card. Like I'm just going to do a full PCB breakdown of the thing. But yeah, the thing is just, well, today we're going to run it a bit. Now, for the cooling, the cooling situation right now is a bit of a disaster. There's basically a GTX 680 blower heatsink with a fan sitting in front of it. For cooling the core. Now, luckily, 3Dmark Firestrike is not that long a workload, so it's not going to overheat, but it is not very happy about the cooling situation, which is fine, because quite frankly, like, I also tested it with a better cooling system. It didn't really do much of anything. Yeah, unfortunately, so the card runs, it just doesn't overclock very much, and I do want to have the sensors. And actually, I'm going to undervolt it. Well, right now it's set to 1.22 volts on the e-power. We're going to drop it down to 1.1... I think it works at 1.14 for stock clocks. Because I don't want to unnecessarily heat up the card, because it is Maxwell. It is extremely temperature sensitive, and I have no... like, the heatsink is a joke, so we're going to run it at stock first. And then we're going to start overclocking it a bit. Though, the issue is the card just doesn't overclock very much, which is why I'm so frustrated. And the thing is, I put so much time into it. Like, this is not, like, I think the cards had, like, 5 or 6 revisions. That's one way to look at it. Like, there's been 5 or 6 different iterations of this card that I've tried to run, and all of them... Okay, no, that's not true. The very early iterations didn't run very well at all. But yeah, the later ones, like, basically once I got it to a certain state, it was just like nothing I did made a difference. As in, it always topped out at the same frequency that we're gonna hit here eventually. Um, anyway, I guess I could talk a little bit about how, well, I'm not sure what I want to cover in this video. I guess we can talk about, like, the actual... Like, the thing is, it's not... technically, it's a working Titan X now, so it's like, yeah, it's repaired, but it's not really... Like, I didn't really have any plans to... like, if you remember the condition that I got this card in, it had a short circuit from V-core, from 12 volts to V-core, which is what you get when your high-side MOSFET explodes in a power stage, which it's a NVIDIA reference PCB, so yes, the power stages explode. That's kind of what they do. Especially because, like, well, modern NVIDIA cards aren't so bad, like, but everything before the 1080 Ti, the stock power delivery on those cards is just very, like, you have basically the VRM quality ranges from barely acceptable to complete and utter trash. And just, like, and that's just been the standard for NVIDIA GPUs up until the 1080 Ti. In fact, the original Titan X Pascal, that card has like half the VRM of a 1080 Ti, which is just like, I mean, it's a high-end Nvidia card. If you expected actual build quality, you should have probably not bought a high-end Nvidia card, at least not built by Nvidia. Asus, EVGA, Asus, EVGA, MSI, Galax. Who else is there? Well, actually, Palette sometimes puts out some pretty nice PCBs as well. So yeah, but reference NVIDIA designs tend to, up until the 1080 Ti, have been generally pretty terrible. So I never really had any plans of repairing the VRM proper because it was a terrible VRM when it wasn't exploded. Um, and after so basically what I did with it was I figured out which power stage was broken by just desoldering all the inductors, because the problem with having one phase in a VRM shorted out is that all the phases are in parallel. So ultimately, you can't tell which phase is shorted. Now, luckily, this VRM is a 6-phase and it has split 12-volt inputs, so you can actually tell which which part of the VRM is shorted out with some clever probing, and then you just have to pull like 2 or 3 inductors before you'll identify the actual failed phase, which pulling 3 inductors isn't really that much work, so I pulled 3 inductors, figured out which power stage was shorted, removed the shorted power stage, put the 2 phases that weren't shorted back together, as in I returned the inductors for those. And then I had the great idea to run the card because I wanted to check that the core was actually healthy, right? And it booted up, it ran the GPU-Z render test, and that was great. And then I had the stupid idea to run 3Dmark Firestrike on a VRM that at full health is pretty bad. But now that it was missing an entire, like one of the I think 8 power stages normally, you might be like, wait, how does a 6-phase have 8 power stages? It's an NVIDIA GPU. Nothing that NVIDIA does with their power delivery ever makes any sense. Like, as far as I'm concerned, NVIDIA GPU power delivery design is an exercise in making something that should be really simple as complicated as physically possible. It's like, why is there so much current balancing circuitry? Who knows? Why is this necessary? Anyway... Or why do you have 8 power stages for your 6-phase? Why didn't you just build a better VRM that was an actual 8-phase with your 8 bloody power stages? You're already paying for 8 freaking power stages. Why aren't you using them? But yeah, no, that would be, that would just not be NVIDIA enough, I guess. But, well, to be fair, with like a 2080 Ti, the VRM on a 2080 Ti is still weird, and there's still way too much power balancing crap on the card, in my opinion. But at least now they're actually using all the power stages to deliver more power instead of just balancing the power inputs, which is still, like, I don't know why they bother. Anyway, yeah, so that just finished Firestrike, and that's all very well and good, performs about how you'd expect a stock Titan to perform. I do believe I have some of the driver settings tweaked on this. Like, we're not running LOD or anything, so none of the hardcore stuff. But yeah, I have maxed pre-rendered frames, prefer maximum performance. What else is there? I think there's filtering, yeah, texture filtering for high performance. So yeah, slightly tweaked to get a little bit more GPU score here. Anyway, I'm gonna bump up the voltage again, and the thing is, we're going to bump it back up to 1.22, and at this point, it should run plus 90. The memory overclocking works fine, but anyway, back to my story with running the card without the first power stage missing. So I ran Firestrike on it. It finished GT1, which is really surprising considering GT1, so by GT1 I mean this test right here, graphics test 1. GT1 actually pulls more power than GT2 does. So it was really, looking back, it's really surprising that GT1 actually finished, because in GT2, the VRM exploded again. And that was the point where I was like, okay, we really need to get this on the, I need to get this on the E-Power as soon as possible, because the thing is, as you start losing phases, it just puts more load on the remaining phases. So, if you go from, a crappy 6-phase down to a crappier 5-phase, now it's like, well, previously it was overloaded already, and now it's got less phases, and it still has to handle the same amount of current, so... you're just knocking down the lifespan every time you do something like that. Anyway, I'm kind of annoyed that I had the card explode on me in Firestrike, because the issue is every time you blow up a high side MOSFET, which is exactly what I ended up with, for whatever reason, It seems to be that, like, I think I've had one card where there was a low side MOSFET failed, and the reason that low side MOSFET failed was because the current balance, like the current monitoring circuitry was broken. Um, but most cards I get have failed high sides, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. Like normally, like the low side handles all of the current, but for whatever reason, the high side blows up. So generally, if your VRM goes and your high side goes, the problem is that you're shorting 12 volts to the output. So you can potentially, damage the core quite significantly. And that's what I like to believe is why this card doesn't clock very well anymore. Because, again, like, it's going to finish 1430 right now, hopefully. It might be a little bit too warm at this point, but hopefully it'll do 1430. Um, but yeah, like, the card... just doesn't, like, if I send more, like if I raise the voltage any more than it's currently raised, it doesn't improve in overclocking. In fact, if I raise the voltage another 20 or 30 millivolts, it's going to crash sooner, which I'll try well, the thing is you could also blame temperatures for that, but anyway, like the card does not overclock very well at all, so I'm really quite annoyed about that. Because, like, the thing is, I don't have a lot of Maxwell overclocking experience whatsoever. It's just not an architect. Like, I'm not a big fan of NVIDIA GPUs, and Maxwell, like, I like Fermi. Fermi's cool. Fermi's nice and dumb and very fun to mess with. And, like, Kepler, well, I've actually played with some Kepler cards, and Kepler cards aren't too bad. Like, the Kepler cards are, still, like, pretty decent. But then it's like Maxwell, and I've played with Pascal quite a bit, mostly because I got sent a dead 1080 Ti that I repaired. So, had a chance to play with one of those. But Maxwell's just not an architecture I've really played with very much. So, yeah, anyway, this thing doesn't scale with voltage, like, at all. Like, Maxwell generally doesn't scale with voltage as far as I know. But this one, like, we're at 1.22 volts right now on the, like, e-power setting. And I do believe I have droop. Actually, no, the droop switches don't do anything. Anyway, but it's not running straight 1.22 volts to the core, actually. So, yeah, I'm not sure why it clocks so badly. Because I've done so much to the card. Like, I ran it with no caps behind the core. I ran it with a bunch of caps behind the core. I ran it with wires going to the core, without wires going to the core. I've had it with lots of voltage loss from the e-power to very, very little voltage loss going from the e-power to the core. Makes no difference. The damn thing just doesn't go past 1430. I have no idea why. And as far as I know, like, Maxwell should do 1500 plus. So maybe the repeated failures of the stock VRM just kind of shot the core. And so the core, like, the thing is, I also don't know if the card was ever good to begin with, because I never got a chance to overclock it before I put the e-power on. So I don't know if it's like, maybe I'm just bad at e-power, maybe the card's just bad. Right? The thing you want to tell yourself is, of course, just like, it's the card's fault. It's not my fault, because, of course, how could it possibly be my fault? But, yeah, I'm really, really not sure why this thing only does 1430. And I'm really annoyed that it only does 1430. So, yeah. Like, it's still, I think, one of the faster GPUs in my GPU. Well, I do have two 1080 Ti's, so... But the thing, I don't have a lot of really fast GPUs, so this is still, like, up there in terms of GPUs that I have and their performance. But, yeah, it's like, I can't run more than this. So if we go plus 10 at this point... Right, it's gonna crash in GT1, and if I raise the voltage, it's gonna crash even sooner. Anyway, I'm gonna show you the max temperature. So as you can see, it's only going up to like 72 degrees because Firestrike is just not that long a workload. I am gonna let it cool down a bit right now because obviously we need the temperature headroom. So I'm just gonna temporarily mash the fan onto the heatsink a bit better, because right now that fan is just kind of sitting there, right? So just gonna try force a little bit more air through the fin stack. It's not helping that, like, today is really, like, well, it's like 3 a.m. It's probably like 3 a.m. at this point, or 2 a.m. I don't know. It's pretty late at night, but anyway, it's not helping that, like, tonight is actually quite warm, which I'm very annoyed about. But, yeah, anyway, so I'll leave it like that. Please don't fall over. And this freaking fan. There we go. Oh, I got it. Okay, there's like a very specific angle at which I can jam that fan between the PCIe slots, and it just kind of holds. So I've just managed to do that. And we're sitting at 47. Okay, it's too hot, but whatever. It's not gonna change anything. So yeah. I'm still thinking of messing around with the card a little bit more, because I have a like there I took some oscilloscope measurements which are very concerning, but the problem is I can't like track down, and there you go. So that just died instantly. So yeah, 1440 just isn't gonna run. No, but I did take some oscilloscope measurements on this card, which are very concerning because there's like horrible peak-to-peak values on one of the capacitors behind the core. But the thing is, if I measure from literally any other capacitor behind the core, it's fine. It's like just that one. And they're all V-core capacitors as well. So it's just like, is that capacitor like loose or something? I have no idea. But yeah, card clocks like garbage. I suspect it might be something to do with the horrible peak-to-peak measurements, but like I don't know what's causing them, so that's not really, helpful. Um, yeah, and I don't have any other cards to compare against, so that's kind of the thing. Like, yeah, but it runs. I'm kind of not sure what I'll do with it. Like, the issue is, like, since it clocks so badly, it's like if I take it on dry ice and it maxes out at 1600 megahertz, which, considering the current state of the card, is not like completely unrealistic in my opinion. That would be like that's just horribly disappointing, right? Like 1600 megahertz. There's people who've run Titan X's at 1600 on freaking water cooling. Admittedly, I suspect their water cooling was a little bit on the chilly ambient side, like not quite ambient side, or maybe just they were in a cold climate. But or they stuck the radiator out the window in winter, like once again, just cold climate. But anyway, yeah. So the thing is like running dry ice and getting like cold water clocks is just kind of like, well, that's depressing. Okay, like that's so bad that you don't like you shouldn't post that, in my opinion. Like that's like no, that's a disaster. At the same time, the problem is like it is a working Titan X core, so. And the e-power, like the funny thing is the e-power is technically kind of worth more than the actual Titan here. But it's also a working Titan. So it's like, I don't know what to do with it at this point. I do want to bench it. And I said dry ice because I don't really want to go all the way with like liquid nitrogen on this card. Mostly because GPUs really chug liquid nitrogen, and yeah, with dry ice it's easier to work. Like it's so much easier to work with. Honestly, dry ice benching, in my opinion, like for most things, dry ice is a lot like water cooling. Like there's very little difference. Just throw it on there, and you run it like it's on water. Like you just have to top up the dry ice every so often. So, yeah, that's why I'm kind of toying with the idea of throwing it on dry ice, but. I don't know. Maybe I should try figure out what is wrong with that capacitor. But the thing is, if I measure on literally any of the other caps, it's like the voltage regulation is fine, and then you measure on this one, like there's a cap sort of down that way. Oops. Man. Well, that's why you normally have fans held in place by something. That's not the first time that's happened. I'm actually kind of annoyed about that because I do like that fan. I don't really want to grind down the blades. Anyway, but yeah, there's a cap sort of behind the core that it just measures horribly. And I guess, well, it cooled down a bit, so I guess I can raise the voltage a little. Bump it up to 1.24, and we can watch it crash even faster. The thing is, though, is just like even on the oscilloscope, even with the horrible peak-to-peak values, like I think it was like 380 millivolts or something. On this iteration of the card, though I had an earlier iteration where I was getting like 420 millivolts. It's not like it made a difference. It's still topped out at the same average voltage, same max clock. So I don't even know, like, I don't know if the measurement's off or like what is up with it. But yeah, and the thing is the minimum voltage actually goes up as I raise the voltage on the e-power. So like if it could scale with voltage, the voltage is going up. It should be scaling. Is it actually going to run now? Is it going to do that thing where stuff doesn't work until I point a camera at it? Or, you know, the opposite direction of it works until you point a camera at it? No, it doesn't work. Got a little bit further this time, though. But, yeah, the thing is, I don't know that much about Maxwell overclocking. And this thing is just, like, very, very disappointing. So yeah, if I keep raising the voltage, it's not going to get better. And the cooling is just going to max out really quickly. Oops, wrong mouse. Yeah, so, okay, well, it's still at 72. The memory is fine. Memory overclocks just fine. I don't have, I didn't bother to set up memory over voltage, which might have been a mistake, but considering that the core is garbage, it's just like, eh. Like, unless I figure out, like, unless I fix the core, I'm not too fussed about the memory clocking like crap. Like, it doesn't really make much of a difference if, you know, if you can't get the core clocks, it's just like, you know. That's the important part as far as I'm concerned for GPU overclocking. So, yeah. The card does run, so I guess, you know, yay, I fixed it, kinda. Now if it could actually just, like the annoying thing is just all this effort to get that E-power on there, and it just doesn't overclock. And I have no idea why. And the thing is, actually, like, so based on the little bit of reading that I've done about Maxwell, overclocking, when you get those, like, green square artifacts, that normally indicates that you have the voltage too high. Which is like, but we're at 1.24 volts on the E-power, and behind the core that should be translating to about 1. Actually, it droops under load, so it should be getting like 1.19 right behind the core at this point. Which, like, I don't know what stock cards are on, again, because, like, on NVIDIA GPUs, you don't actually have proper voltage readouts, which is, like, yeah, another, one of the many reasons why I don't like NVIDIA GPUs. Yeah, like, that's that. Also, somebody's going to be like, oh, but Buildo, you don't have the extra 6-pin plug-in. It's jumped. Like, that, this solder, like, this mess over here is taking care of that 6-pin power connector. So that's why I can run the card without it. Anyway, so, yeah. There, that's the video. Got the Titan up and running. It's just massively disappointing for now. So, also, I tested it all the way up to like 1.35 volts, which was, like, it didn't do anything. It just, like, it kept shutting down faster and faster. Or actually, I don't think it was shutting down faster and faster. It was just randomly crashing in the GT1. So it was just like, yeah, that wasn't going anywhere. And I did try it with a bigger heatsink. That still, like, it just doesn't go over 1430, and I have no idea why. So, yeah, I'm super disappointed with this thing. Like, it's cool that it runs, but it's just, like, it runs really bad, so that's not really much of a win. Yeah, so I'm not really sure what to do with this card at this point. Like, I guess I should just figure out what the hell that like, the thing is, I have no idea why that cap would be reading what it's reading, because the other caps are fine. It's just that one. Why is that one screwed when all the other ones are fine? So, yeah, that's that. I'm really, like, the repair, like, so far, I'm really annoyed with the cards that I've been trying to repair. Like, it's not been a good run, has it? So you've got the Vega 1, right? Because this Titan was sent by a guy who also sent along the Vegas. So huge thanks to him for the cards. But yeah, so you have the first Vega, which was the Frontier Edition, which just refused to turn on, even though I fixed literally everything. At least as far as I'm concerned. Like, everything was up and running. Stupid thing didn't want to run anyway. Then there's the Vega 56, which originally worked only if you fiddled with the screws until you got the, like, mounting pressure just right. And then if it thermal cycled, it would, like, reset itself and you'd have to redo the screws again. And that card, I kept messing with it until it stopped working. So good job. Yeah, like that one stopped working at this point properly, so it's just like, okay, that's great. So that's 2 down. And this technically runs, but it's just like, yeah, but it runs like garbage, so I wouldn't really count that as a win. Like, so yeah. Anyway, that's it for this video. So I guess thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. If you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon. There's a link to that down in the description below. Speaking of the Patreon, like all of these e-power attempts have basically chewed through my solder supply. I never thought the day would come that I'd run out of solder on that massive roll, and it's just like, and now it's empty. It's a deceptive amount of plastic in it. Anyway, so yeah, I have a Patreon. I need more solder. Check out the link. There's also the AHOC Teespring store where you can pick up shirts, stickers, posters, the usual YouTuber merch, which, again, I need solder. Solder is not actually that expensive, so, but there's other things that go into this than just like solder. There's all the capacitors. Admittedly, I did actually recycle some of the capacitors from the dead Vegas onto this card. I can't say that they actually did anything, but they're there. Yeah. There's also a lot of the wires, right? Like especially the 10 standard gauge. That like I'm burning through that quite quickly. But yeah, so that's it for the video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.